This is the ninth in a series of video-based lessons that will describe the systematic process of building databases from scratch, aka data modeling. We will introduce the basics of entity relationship diagrams, or ERDs, and use these concepts for design of simple to moderate business databases. This video will go through the basic concepts and terminology associated with the database design using crow's-foot notation-based entity relationship diagrams, or ERDs. We will explore the relationships between entities in detail because we know that these are the essential building blocks of relational databases. We will conclude by discussing several diagram rules and quickly show some modeling alternatives to crow's-foot notation. Throughout the video, in-class projects and assignments, we will make an extensive use of ER assistant diagramming software, but will not shy from simply sketching our initial diagrams on paper. This material is covered in Chapter 5 in the textbook. Every entity relationship diagram, or ERD, has three elements. 1. Entity types, which I'll mostly refer to simply as entities. 2. Attributes describing different characteristics of these entities. And 3. Relationship between pairs of entities. While it is possible to have multi-way relationships between more than two entities, we are not going to be discussing these in this class. So, an entity type is a collection of individual entities that share the same characteristics or attributes. People, objects, events are all examples of entities and are represented by a rectangle in an ERD. Now we're going to start an ER assistant, okay, and then we're going to create a blank new diagram, and then we'll click in the under the insert menu and examine the three types of ERD elements we just discussed, entities, attributes, and relationships, right at the top of the drop-down menu. Okay, and we'll start by inserting the first entity, clicking the new button and calling it customer with capital C. For now it's going to be a regular entity, okay, and once you hit close, you'll see the outline of the rectangle representing that customer entity. At this point, we're going to save what we did, which is again not a heck of a lot, and navigate to the class folder, right? The 05_basic_ERD and then lectures. Okay, I'm going to use slides and videos as usual, and we'll type ERD 5 for 5th chapter, _01 let's see, customer _NTT. Okay, now double click the customer entity to get back into the entity dialog box and click on the attributes button. This is going to bring the attributes window that's going to allow us to create a list of attributes of each of these customers. So what we'll do, we'll create a few of them as listed on the current slide. I believe it's slide number 3 in the top right corner. I'm not going to go through the entire list because it's kind of too long, but I'll definitely create a customer ID, okay, and designate it as primary key. We're not going to bother at this point in chapter 5 to specify the integer or decimal or char, varchar data types. We're going to do that in chapter 6 before we're ready to convert these into a particular RDBMS like MySQL. So for now, we're mostly concentrating on entities and the relationships between them, not as much attributes either, although we will have some. Certainly the primary ID is going to be the key one. Okay, then we continue with what do we got? Company, okay, new last name, new first name, new age, gender, and I'll just stop at a type. For type, because that one is not clear based on the attribute name, I'm going to type a comment, which I could do for every single one of the attributes that I need to, and say something like A stands for account or wholesale customer, and R stands for retail customer. Okay, the importance of of comments cannot be overstated, and we'll talk about it more in I think chapters towards the end of the chapter 6. But comments can be placed on attributes. They can be also placed on the entities. So, for example, we can briefly describe our sporting goods customers, such as with something like most of sporting goods customers are of retail type, as we sort of just discussed. Period. We have a small, okay, comma, but growing number of account slash wholesale customers as well. Okay, and then we're going to click close, and then you're going to see all the customer attributes, starting with the customer ID in the order they were entered. First, customer ID, primary key depicted with the underscore, then company last name, first name, age, gender, and type. And if you double click, you can again examine comments on entities as well as attributes themselves. Now, what we're going to do in this particular video, after switching back to the presentation, we'll talk about mostly about understanding the relationship between entities on the subsequent slide number 4. Okay, we will use the so-called crow's foot notation. The crow's foot is this symbol right here. Okay, that includes the relationship names, like places right here. Okay, and describes the association between two entities in each direction, between customer and orders in this particular example. But looking for entities and relationships in the problem descriptions, entities typically correspond to nouns in relationship to verbs. Customer, places, orders describes two entities, customer and order, both nouns. In relationship places, which is a verb, is connecting the two nouns. Okay, let's switch back to ER Assistant, and let's save as 02 cust order relationship. Cust order relationship. And when saving these diagrams, you do not have to, actually you should not type .erd because it's going to be automatically appended. Okay, if you look at the slide, it shows that extension, but here we don't type it in a file name. It's automatically there. Now this is the same looking file, but different name. And as we just sort of mentioned, for majority of these ERD designs, we are going to ignore the list of entity attributes, okay, except for the primary key like customer ID, in order to make the diagram smaller, as you can see in a second, and easier to read. Okay, and this will allow us to exclusively concentrate on the entities and the relationship between those entities. We'll add attributes towards the end of the video once all the entities and relationships have been fully resolved and implemented. In other words, once the ERD design is complete. So let's click on the attributes and remove all of them except the customer ID. Notice that they are listed in alphabetic order rather than the order in which we place them on. So we're going to delete, make sure you don't delete the customer ID. We'll delete all the other ones we placed, which should not take too long. Okay, and then we'll close it, and then we'll end up with only a small rectangle representing the customer entity with its primary key shown. Then, using the either insert entity or the little rectangular shortcut button, we're going to create a new orders entity, which is also regular, okay, with a new attribute called order ID, which is its primary key and no other as we just discussed, and then just pop up somewhere to the right of it. Okay, after we add the second entity of our entity relationship diagram, now it's the time to place a relationship between the two. We can use it either using the REL button or insert relationship, where we create a new one called places. Okay, and then right dialog, in the right side of the dialog box, click customer, and then you'll see all the options become available, and then orders. Okay, and we're going to read it as follows. 1, customer places many orders. Okay, so what we'll do next is we'll talk about the fact that the customer is mandatory for the relationship. In other words, order cannot exist without a customer. But for now, we're going to assume that the order is optional for the relationship. In other words, customer can exist without an order, and it's called a prospect. And we'll then, do away with that particular assumption. Okay, so click mandatory on the customer and optional under orders, and we'll then read the whole thing as in one customer, okay, that has to exist places, okay, many orders which are optional for this relationship. Okay, we're going to close that, and we're going to, it always, jumps all over the place, so you have to kind of drag it around by grabbing typically the name of the relationship, placing it in between, making it kind of look, saving all the changes, making it look like it does on the slide, and then we'll pause.